Always great to catch up with the member for Riverina, Michael McCormack. Michael, you've been out of the electorate down in Melbourne, I understand.
I have. I always come down to the Melbourne Cup when I can. Haven't been able to come down for the last couple of years, but I was the one when the COVID first hit, and it looked as though we were going to actually see so much sport, indeed racing, wiped off the calendar. I was the one who went in and said, no, we need to continue to race. We need to continue to have those meetings with or without a crowd, because it creates so much turnover. And that turnover, that betting money, and all that's associated with racing, not to mention the jobs, helps the economy. It helps to fund hospitals, it helps to fund schools, and I appreciate that some people have concerns about equine welfare. Well, that's being taken absolutely care of too by the authorities, as it should be, and great improvements have been made in that regard. But the Cup stops the nation, and it did all over Australia again yesterday, and what a great ride by Mark Zahra and on gold tip to win the Cup. Of course, he didn't have any of my money on it, but certainly a good story given what had happened to him last year with very elegant and unable to ride due to a suspension, and came back yesterday and won the race that stops the nation.
So you didn't have a flutter on him, but did you have a flutter somewhere else?
I had a bit of a flutter, but none of my horses came home. But that's all part of it. It's a great day to catch up with people and see Flemington. Well, it was hit by a fair amount of rain yesterday, as with many courses right throughout the country. I noticed it was sunny at Randwick for the big dance, which is a good concept because it brings together country horses. And the Wagga Cup Alias certainly ran around yesterday, had a bit of my money on it too. It didn't win, but it was a good concept by Peter Volandis to bring all the country cup winners from around New South Wales together for a $2 million race. Look, it won't ever take the place of the Melbourne Cup, but it complements it, it adds to it, and if it's getting people to the races and their mind off a few of the troubles that are going around the nation at the moment, well, that's got to be seen as a good thing.
Now, you've made the point that in some respects the Riverina had a stake on what was happening in the Melbourne Cup in the form of the Cup itself.
Well, all that glittered in the Gold Cup trophy yesterday actually was Riverina gold, because 1.65 kilograms of the 18-carat gold all came from Evolution's Cow project, Cow facility there near West Wyland, just northeast of West Wyland. Hundreds and hundreds of people from West Wyland and Forbes are employed at Lake Cowell operations, and all the gold in the Gold Cup trophy that was presented yesterday to the connections for Gold Tip, what a name, came from West Wyland. I should have cottoned onto that little I should have got the tip, but
it was written in the stars in that respect.
Indeed, it was.
Michael, we talk often about agriculture, but briefly, what's the major mining activity happening? I thought there was a major rare earth sort of opportunity developing. It might be across the border in the electorate of Farrer, but I thought there was something developing in that sort of West Wyland direction.
Oh, there is, and around Highfield, which is in the electorate of Parks, there's quite a lot of those rare earths that lithium and a whole heap of other components that make up mobile phone technology. We wouldn't have mobile phones if we didn't have rare earths, and certainly there are a lot of activity in that regard, and that's got to be seen to be a good thing too, because it actually gives in that area the farmers the option to be able to sell up, and also the local government areas there the opportunity to create more work, create opportunities that otherwise would not have been afforded. And this has got to be seen as a good thing. Australia has many of the rare earths that go into the componentry for mobile phones and other technology, solar panels, etc. And, I know a lot of people are concerned about mining, but mining gives us the modern living that we enjoy, that we indeed take for granted in many respects, and it also provides a lot of money for public schools, public hospitals, and all the infrastructure that we so rely on. And this has got to be seen to be a good thing.
Well, with the direction we're heading, whether you like it or not, when it comes to renewables and rewiring the grid and a grid-scale battery in future, China seems to have a stranglehold, particularly on the battery minerals. So the more Australia can be self-reliant in that respect's got to be a good thing.
Couldn't agree more. And look, I know the government is pushing a manufacturing agenda, as we did when we were in government, and that's going to be encouraging for the future, because if COVID did teach us anything, it was the fact that we need to be a little bit more resilient, a little bit more reliant on our own knowledge and capabilities and expertise, and we've got them. We are improving the skill sets amongst all sectors of employment and engagement in the economy. and it's onwards and upwards, hopefully from here. But the budget didn't provide much relief for regional Australia. I was disappointed in that. I was disappointed to see the instant asset write-off sunsetted, in other words, taken away. And so I do urge and encourage those businesses, if they are going to instantly write down an asset, they need to do it before June 30 next year. And that's not far away, really, when you think about it.
Now, the Treasurer's office has taken umbrage. It's quotes given to us attributable to Jim Chalmers, in effect saying, look, you've got it wrong that it's being taken away. It was something that was going to expire under the Coalition. Had there been an expression from the Coalition that you wanted to keep that going beyond its expiry date?
Well, I'd just say we've got form on the board in that regard over the years, the turnover thresholds for eligible businesses, as well as the amounts able to be claimed. And indeed what they were able to claim, whether it was brand new or second hand, have been enhanced, have been improved upon, have been increased. We put the instant asset write-off in, we repeated, we extended it over and over and over again. Successive budgets, that's what we do. We support business. We are, the coalition parties are the parties for business, for small business in particular. But, and that allowed 19,600 businesses just in my electorate. That's just in my electorate. So you can multiply that 20,000 times over the 151 or so electorates in Australia. Well, there are 151, but, there's about 20,000 businesses in each and every one of those electorates benefiting from that instant asset write-off, which Jim Chalmers, in one fell swoop, has just taken away. And if there was one thing that we did for business, apart from the lowest tax rate for something like 77 years, it was that. And so many businesses, so many farmers indeed, told me that they were able to buy their heavy harvesting equipment, able to buy their new ute, able to spruce up their actual retail outlets, all of those sorts of things. Well, even a cafe, putting in a new barista machine, these sorts of things provided the impetus that business so desperately needed, particularly through COVID when times were tough, and times still are. And of course, Dr. Jim Chalmers, well, Labor hasn't always had a great propensity to back business. Certainly not with tax rates. Certainly not with this measure that they've put in place. And I'm really disappointed that they've decided to take away that instant asset write-off provision.
Now, whilst that will be expiring this financial year, or at the end of this financial year, there is, I suppose, hope, isn't there, that some lobbying might convince the Treasurer to change track and actually put it in the next budget, I suppose, which would be about May next year. It'd be late.
You're right.
It'd be
exactly
tight.
Right. He's got another opportunity. He's got another opportunity to come back to the dispatch box to put in place the instant asset write-off, to extend it, maybe even change it, but to certainly make sure that it's still there. And he's also got a chance to put money into dams. At the moment, they've stripped all the money away from dams, and that's unfortunate. And they're putting it into perhaps other things, but and that's called just revenue. That's called general revenue. Now, I appreciate that the economy is having difficulties. I appreciate that governments need to tighten their belts, but you don't tighten your belts by taking away those sorts of infrastructure assets which provide for flood mitigation, which provide for increased economic activity around farm agriculture production. Certainly that's the case in Scottsdale in northeast Tasmania, where the last Australian dam was built just a few years ago under my watch. You don't get it then by buying backwater from irrigation communities, which then strips away that money and that assets from those towns, from those river towns which desperately rely on it. And I appreciate we've got more than enough water at the moment. Heaven help if it only would just stop raining. But these are times when governments need to make brave and bold decisions, and I'm afraid last Tuesday's budget didn't do that.
Yeah, you mentioned flood mitigation, and we'll talk about the local impacts in a moment, but something that was in the budget, even though it's a checkbook, we don't know how big it is for buyback in the Murray-Darling Basin. Just how problematic is it that we don't even know how much the government is going to spend in the market? They say it would be commercial in confidence or something like that, so that they don't want the market to know how much they're out there to spend. But we saw under Penny Wong, former Water Minister, some major purchases by the federal government in the name of the Murray-Darling.
Well, it's like you're monitoring the blood bank and you've got Dracula outside. You know he's there, you just don't know how much blood he's going to take. That's the unfortunate thing about it, because that water will be brought back out of those river communities. And the unfortunate thing is that people, yes, they pay down debt, they do whatever they want with the money that they get, and good luck to them. But it takes the water away, it takes the money that water can create away from those communities, and often takes the people away from them themselves. They head off to the Gold Coast, the community's left with stranded assets, and then everybody pays a little bit more in the long run for the next lot of water to come down the river. So, look, it's unfortunate, and it's a lazy way of doing it. We don't know how much the capability of Labor to be able to strip that water away. It's a bit difficult to talk about water at the moment because there's so much of it. And, I know even around the patch that certainly you stream into, there's a number of road closures due to flash flooding and due to the downpour we've had in the past few days. But these are things which we have to have vision from governments, and we haven't seen much from this Labor government thus far.
Maybe the pointier end of buyback is it's reducing the size of your local footy and netball team, or maybe a merger will be imminent.
Well, the number of kids at school, and then that has an impact upon teacher numbers. It has an impact on hairdressing salons because they haven't got the clientele they once had. It has a number of factors right throughout. It's that ripple-on effect which really deletes so much activity out of these communities. And they're good communities, Griffith, Collyambley, Leeton, Narandra, all those wonderful towns. They've relied on agriculture, they've relied on irrigation since the early part of last century, and they're now facing an uncertain future.
Michael McCormack, member for Riverina, with plenty to scrutinise in the budget and the federal government going up to the next budget. Thanks for joining us again on Flow.
Look forward to chatting again soon. Thanks, Ricky.